In the near future, Earth was destroyed by environmental calamities and overpopulation, forcing the human race to abandon it and look beyond the solar system in search for a new home. They eventually find a new planet called Nova Prime. They are not alone on this planet. There are monsters ready to kill them. These monsters are known as Ursa. They are blind but can smell and feel human fear and frustration. Humankind is again in danger of extinction. Legendary Ranger Cypher learns to compress his fear and frustration with the technique known as ghosting. With this technique, Ursa monsters are unable to detect him, so he is invisible to the monsters and he can do whatever he wants with them. Legendary Ranger leads this war and the Ursa monsters are defeated. Cypher has two kids, Kitai and Senshi. Senshi was killed by the Ursa monsters when they invaded Cypher's home few years back. Kitai is the remaining son. He is 13 years, all he wants is to be like his father. He is a cadet in the Ranger Force. He is supposed to be advanced to a full Ranger. He fails because he doesn't reach the expected qualities of a Ranger. He is full of fear and frustration. While at dinner he tells his father that he wasn't advanced to a Ranger. His father is so disappointed and displeased. Cypher tells his wife that he will be announcing his retirement after his last mission, where he will be supervising and training Rangers to ghost. His wife is happy but tells him to be a father to their son, not a commanding officer. Cypher then decides to go with his son in his last mission. In the morning, while preparing to leave for the mission, Kitai notices a Ranger with an amputated leg approaching his father. He wanted to pay respect because he saved his life in the war of the Ursa monsters. Cypher tells him that it's not necessary, but the Ranger insists and tells his friends to help him stand and salutes the legendary Ranger Cypher. Kitai is so intrigued by the Ranger's action. They take one Ursa monster in chains that they will use for ghost training. Then they set off for their mission. Kitai is trying his best to reconnect with his father, but Cypher seems to be so cold and not too bothered by him. Cypher tells Kitai to get some rest, while Cypher is sleeping. Kitai moves from his seat to go have a look at the Ursa monster. While he is there, Cypher senses danger on the spaceship and hurries to go find his son. He tells him to buckle up and stay still. He then goes to the cockpit to advise the pilots. His instincts are right. They start being hit by medium particles of meteor rocks, which severely damages their ship. Cypher runs back to ensure safety of his son. They are forced to have an emergency landing on unknown planet, which is later identified as Earth. Cypher gets knocked down while trying to make his son stabilize from a panic attack. The ship fluctuates into two pieces before hitting the ground. The ship is destroyed and it looks like Kitai survived the crashing with no injuries. He starts looking for survivors of the crash. He eventually sees his father. He comes closer to find out whether he is dead or still alive. Luckily, Cypher is still alive but severely injured and unconscious. His two legs are broken and he can't move. When he regains his consciousness, he immediately tells his son to check on the Ursa monster they were carrying on the ship. He replies that it remained in the other half of the ship that might have fallen far from them. He then directs his son to the cockpit to pick an emergency beacon so that he can send a signal back to Nova Prime for rescue. Unfortunately, the beacon is destroyed due to the crash landing and not functioning. Only 2 people survive the crash landing. Cypher informs his son that there is another beacon in the tail of the ship that is approximately 100 kilometers from them. He tells his son that he is severely injured, so he has to retrieve the beacon or else they are all going to die. He starts to brief his son. He gives him 6 oxygen fluids which will help him breathe properly on the strange planet they landed on, that are just enough for the days he will spend on the way to the tail of the ship. He tells him that his suit is equipped with cameras so he will be able to see what he sees and what he doesn't see, and tells him that he will guide him. He informs him that everything on this planet has evolved to kill humans. He asks about the Ursa monster that they were carrying. Cypher tells him that there are 3 possibilities. The fast one is that it died in the crash. The second one is that it's injured very badly and still contained, and the last one is that it's out and hunting them. He emphasizes his son to do exactly what he says, and in that way they will all survive. He starts his journey, but immediately he moves out of the ship. He starts panicking and Cypher tells him to calm down. He tells him to take a knee as a way of calming him down. He then proceeds to his journey. Cypher checks his legs to see how bad they are injured. He thinks about taking painkillers, but they may cause him dizziness, and yet he needs to be there to guide his son all through his way. He decides not to take them. After some time, he tells his father that his suit is turning black, and Cypher tells him that his suit is made of smart fabric which contains a motion sensor and that it's tracking a life coming closer to him. Shortly, a monkey-like creature approaches him. His father advises him to stand down and recognize his power. But because of his fear and frustration, he picks up a stone and shoots at it. This brings many more of them and they start throwing stones at him. He is left with no options but runs. Cypher directs him towards the nearby river that will help him loose them after he crosses, because the creatures are afraid of water. He reaches the river and swims across it. He loses the monkeys, but out of fear he remains running because he thinks they are still coming after him. His father tells him to stop running, but he was so frightened he couldn't stop. He yells at him to stop and take a knee. He eventually stops and tries to calm down. His suit then turns white and Cypher tells him to do a self-assessment test to see if he was beaten by something. He tells his father that he is feeling dizzy. He sees a creature on his hand that he might have acquired from the water, but it is too late. It has already bitten him. He gets rid of it. Shortly he starts to lose consciousness and his face starts to swell. Cypher identifies the creature as poisonous. Cypher tells Kitai to open his med kit and administer the antitoxin injection. He tells him to inject himself with the clear liquid fast, but he cannot see properly because the poison has started affecting his nervous system. Cypher tells him to stay focused. He manages to inject himself with the fast injection, but there is one more to go. Cypher tells him to inject himself with the second injection as soon as possible, but he is no longer feeling his hands anymore. He advises him to roll himself on the ground and he does so. The second injection is done. He lies down unconscious, but his father seems proud of him. After some time, the temperature starts to rapidly decrease and Cypher tries to wake his son, but Kitai is still unconscious. Cypher calls his son with unrest until he wakes up. He is then relieved. He informs him he has 9 kilometers to reach a warmer spot because the entire planet transitioning to ice so fast, and Kitai starts running. Cypher is getting memories of her daughter Senshi. She is telling him to blow the candles on FaceTime. But Cypher says it's impossible and asks his wife to help. She also tells him that you can do it. Cypher blows and Kitai on the other side blows the candle. They all laugh. Kitai is told to take his next oxygen inhaler. When he checks, he finds he has remained with only 3 and the others are broken. He doesn't want to tell his dad, but Cypher senses something is wrong when he saw his heart beating so fast. He reaches the warm spot and spends the night. The next day he has to get to the falls. On his way he finds a bunch of dead monkeys compiled together and he gets so scared. Cypher tells him to get to the falls as soon as possible. When Cypher sees the dead monkeys, he realizes the Ursa monster they came with on the ship must have killed them. He releases drones to search and locate the Ursa monster right away, but he doesn't want to scare Kitai. He reaches the falls and the view is so outstanding. Cypher tells him to do an inventory of the equipment he has remained with and he does it. When he reaches on the oxygen fluid he lies that he still had 4 left and Cypher sees his heart beating so fast indicating he is lying. Cypher asks him to show him the case. He is hesitant in the beginning but he later shows him the case. He has only 2 oxygen fluids left. He was lying all along that he had 4. He tells his dad that he thought that he could make it with the fluids he is left with. Cypher then calculates the remaining journey to the tail of the ship and realizes it is impossible for Kitai to complete the remaining journey with only 2 oxygen fluids. He tells his son to abort the mission and tells him to return to the ship and that it's an order. He starts recalling Senshi, his sister. She kept him safe where the monster could not smell his fear and told him not to come out, and she told him that was an order. She went ahead, fought the Ursa monster alone. And the monster killed her. He blames himself for that and can't let it happen again. He tells his dad that he can do it. He can reach the tail of the ship with 2 oxygen inhalers. Cypher tells him that he needs a minimum of 3 inhalers if he is to reach alive. He insists that he can do it with 2 inhalers, but Cypher gives him an order to return back to the ship. Adds on that he did his best but he can't survive with only 2 inhalers. He tells his dad that he wouldn't give any other ranger that order, and Cypher replies that you are not a ranger, you're a cadet. He asks his father that what would he have done to save Senshi because she gave him an order not to come out no matter what. And he asks his dad where he was when Senshi needed him. Kitai says that she called his name but he weren't there because he is never there. He tells his dad that he is not a coward as he thinks and then runs off the cliff and flies away with his suit. His dad screams his name but it is too late. Shortly, a huge eagle came after him in air and his dad alerts him. He tries to avoid it and dodge it, but the eagle is so smart and strong. Cypher tells him to dive and he does so. He then sees a waterfall besides and he diverts into it and the eagle misses. He thinks he has lost the eagle but later it comes in front of him and captures him. Cypher, so wrenched and devastated, thinks he has lost his son. Later, the eagle takes him to its nest. On waking up, he sets his eyes on newly hatched baby eagles. He is scared but worse, more is coming. He sees huge hungry lions approaching the nest on the top of a tree where he is. Shortly the eagle arrives and starts fighting the lions but they are too many. One lion enters the nest and starts eating the baby eagles and he tries to stop it but the lion is not his match. The lion now faces him and it starts attacking him. When it attacks, he dodges it and uses his weapon to throw the lion out of the nest. Another lion enters the nest and he faces it again. He realizes a weak spot on the ground of the nest and then tries to trap the lion towards the spot. When it attacks, he jumps and hits the weak spot, and when the lion lands it just passes through the nest and falls. Unfortunately, all the baby eagles have been killed and some eaten by the lions. The eagle flies away and lets him leave. He climbs down the tree. When he reaches down, he sees the eagle moaning the death of its babies. He's so scared and tries to avoid it. He later tries to reach his dad, but his communication band is totally destroyed and he can't communicate with his father anymore, so he has to continue the journey without the guidance of his dad. On the other hand, Cypher is also trying his best to find his son with the drones he had released earlier to track the monster. Kitai continues with his journey alone. It is becoming night. He needs to find a place to sleep. He digs up into a cave where he finds a warm spot into a volcano mountain. He then starts to recall the directions his father had given him before he set off the journey, and he figures out his way. Cypher is now convinced he has lost his son after looking for him, but he sees no traces for him. In the morning, Kitai continues his journey, but he realizes the eagle is following him all the way, but regardless continues. He is left with one oxygen fluid and it's time for him to take it. He takes it and he has remained with none. He makes a boat out of trunks and tries to cross the river. While on the river, he gets a vision of Senshi telling him to wake up. When he wakes up, the temperatures have started to drop again and he has to find a warm spot as soon as possible. Unfortunately, he is too late. He can't reach the hot spot in time. His body has started freezing. He can't walk. He falls down. Something starts dragging him, and later, after he woke up, he was engulfed in the eagle's wings. The eagle saved him, but it died. He has to continue with his journey. He starts getting hardship in breathing. He needs another oxygen fluid as soon as possible. He is almost giving up when he saw a debris particle from their ship. He knew he is almost there. So he got a higher spot to try to locate the ship's exact location. He sees it and then continues his journey towards it. He reaches on the ship, but he is so weak and barely breathing. He quickly looks for breathing fluids on the ship and finds them, and he takes one. He sees the chamber where the monster was kept and realizes it escaped and out there hunting him. He gets a communication band and he then starts to look for the emergency beacon. Luckily, he finds it still intact and functioning. He tries to communicate to his dad to tell him that he has found the beacon and guide him what to do next. Unfortunately, his dad can see and listen to him, but he can't hear or see his dad. Cypher tries to tell him that he is in a black zone, so no communication is available, but he is unable to listen to anything he says. He tries to use the beacon, but it's not working because he is in a black zone. Kitai, so frustrated and furious, starts to break things around him. He starts panicking again. He starts to assume what his dad would have told him in that situation. Kitai takes a knee. After he calms down, he sees a mountain on his right and decides to go on the mountain to activate the beacon from there. On his way, he finds rangers hanged on trees and he becomes scared. He continues, but now the Ursa monster is behind him and tracking him while smelling his fear. It finds him, it hits him and he falls down. He stands up to run, but it's too quick. He falls into a pool of water. He moves out and tries to climb the rocks to the top, but the monster finds him and tries to pull him back into the water, but it fails. Luckily, he reaches the top of the mountain and removes the beacon to activate it. The Ursa monster is also digging out of the trench pool to come after him. The beacon is still not connecting and the monster is approaching him. It drags him to the ground and throws him on the rocks. While in a lot of pain, he gets flashbacks of her sister Senshi trying to hide him where the Ursa monster won't be able to smell his fear. She went to face it, then it killed her. Lying down in his own pool of blood, he remembers his father's words guiding him on how to ghost. And how to lose all the fear. Right there. He is able to master the ghost technique and he becomes invisible to the monster. It passes on top of him, while his father is seeing him. He stands up with a lot of courage, picks his weapon and faces the monster. He is invisible to the monster now. He cuts it on its limbs and then jumps on top of it to penetrate his swords through its head. It loses its strength and then he does it again until it dies. Cypher watches all this, though he has become weaker, and lost a lot of blood. Kitai holds the beacon and sends the rescue signal back to Nova Prime. Shortly they come for rescue. He comes running looking for his dad. When Cypher saw him, he asks the medics to stand him up. He salutes Kitai in a way of paying him respect for having saved him. Kitai comes running and hugs him. They all go home safe. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Have a great day.